old-fashioned way or some way anyway, I have my guest tonight, Jenny Warren, on the line. She's an AP Spanish teacher at Evergreen High School in Colorado. She's been a teacher since 1998, and in addition to AP Spanish, she teaches all levels of regular Spanish and French. Over the course of her teaching career, she took some time off and did a stint at FEMA in External Affairs, where she worked during the Deepwater Horizon crisis and a few others, running a multilingual cadre responsible for ensuring that all of the helpful documents that were needed were available in all of the languages that were needed. So the combination of linguistics and literacy components involved in determining how best to disseminate information in communities with lower literacy levels has really strengthened her ability to teach by showing new aspects of how language works, and her love of travel fuels her passion for helping young people see and communicate with the world. In addition to her teaching responsibilities, Jen organizes annual educational trips where her students get the opportunity to put their language and cultural learning skills into practice. She's one of my favorite people in the world, and I'm so glad to have her here tonight. One thing that Jen and I have in common is we're both parents to boy-girl twins who were in the high school class of 2019. Each of the four of them have had very different experiences with advanced courses in high school, both in class and in terms of the impact on their post-high school college experience. I want to start with each of us briefly sharing each of our students' experiences so you can get a sense of where advanced classes might take you, and then Jen's going to talk more about different considerations that you might want to think about in making decisions about advanced classes that will hopefully lead you and your student to better outcomes. So my daughter Gabby took every advanced class that was available to her. I'm going to try to set this down. Took every advanced class that was available to her in high school. Our high school is an IB school, so her choices were primarily IB, but she also took AP Statistics and several dual credit math classes. She didn't do the IB diploma primarily due to schedule conflicts, but before making that decision, we actually asked several college admissions professionals whether the IB diploma mattered or whether it was just the courses, and all of them confirmed that the diploma really wasn't considered, which makes sense since the school makes a decision on the student before knowing if they'll receive the diploma. So Gabby really enjoyed her IB classes. She's always been a really conscientious and hardworking student, so the homework burden, and I really mean burden when I talk about IB homework, wasn't really a problem for her. She absolutely loved her dual credit math class as well, in no small part thanks to a fantastic teacher. As a college freshman, she's grateful for the study habits she was required to develop in high schools. That really gave her a leg up on the workload that she's dealing with in college. However, for all those classes, she only got credit for one of her advanced classes because her college's policy is that freshmen can transfer a maximum of 3 outside credits. And she still had to take the college's placement test for math, science, English, and foreign language. This is pretty common at private colleges where oftentimes they'll give placement but no credit, or they might still require students to take a placement exam. Her school's policy is that college is a 4-year experience, and there's plenty out there for students to learn regardless of how advanced they were in high school. One thing that was frustrating to us is that we had to make a decision about taking IB tests before we knew which school she was going to, and she was applying to lots of schools that would have given her all kinds of credits. So we had to commit to the test before knowing if they would matter. And I don't know if AP tests work this way, but if you sign up for an IB test and you don't make it, you're given a score of 0, and that 0 is averaged with all of your teachers' students' other test scores. So you actually hurt your teacher by opting out of the test. So she was stuck spending a couple Saturdays taking tests that didn't matter. Ultimately, though, she never would have been considered for admission to the University of Chicago and some of the other schools that she applied to without taking the full suite of advanced classes. So while they didn't confer any credit benefit to her, they were absolutely essential to her application. So I would stress that if you're planning to apply to elite schools, you should be taking the most rigorous course load your high school offers. If that's not appealing to you, then these colleges probably aren't a fit for you either. But plan that you have to take those classes, and you're probably not going to get any credit for them, and you might even still have to take a placement test. So that was my daughter. My son Alex had a slightly different path. He was tracked into higher level high school classes coming out of middle school, which then put him on a path where he ended up in some IB and some dual credit classes. He's a really different character from his sister. We always joke that he's more like a kid from the 1980s than the kids that you hear about now. You know, he played sports, he had a job, he had a girlfriend, lots of other things besides schoolwork to occupy his time. And schoolwork was never something he really liked to spend a lot of time on anyway. The end result was he did pretty poorly in his advanced classes, mostly due to not putting in the effort that was needed to do well. This had two negative results. One was that he felt like he wasn't very smart. And in fact, you know, there were plenty of evenings when I would go out to check on him doing his homework and find him like crying in his bedroom saying, "I'm the stupidest person I know," which was really a horrible outcome for a smart kid. But he also didn't have a very good GPA. So where he might have earned A's in unweighted classes, he was getting B's and C's in his weighted classes. He ended up doing great on the ACT, and as a result, he got a wonderful scholarship to the University of Arizona. And in fact, it was a big enough scholarship to make it cost the same as staying in state would have. We were really happy about that until I made the mistake of looking at Arizona's scholarship matrix. And there I learned that if he had a slightly better GPA, he would have qualified for an additional $12,000 a year in scholarships. And their scholarships were based on unweighted GPA. So he was in effect penalized financially for taking harder classes in high school. A couple of key takeaways for me from that experience were, first, after doing some more research, I learned that many schools use unweighted GPA as the basis for scholarships, which leads me to say, second, a rule of thumb for me, and Jen may or may not agree with this, is that if financial aid is an important consideration for you, your students should only choose advanced classes where they're sufficiently interested in the topic to put in the work to get the same grade that they would in an unweighted class. On the plus side, Alex has been getting all A's in college, and he regularly tells me that he thinks college is easier than high school, and that he thinks he went to the hardest high school of any of his friends, since he's the only one among them saying that college is easy. So at least there's that. You know, he's now feeling successful and feeling like he was on a good path in high school. So that's mine, and now I'm going to switch it over to Jen to talk about her kiddos.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So I also had two really different experiences, and it was, I would argue, compounded for both because I taught at the high school they went to. So they had that sort of added pressure. Sydney is that child who maps everything out and thinks about everything, and she would do spreadsheets, and she would look at the financial stuff and the scholarship information, and she really had a good idea what it was going to cost her and what her AP scores would help her or hinder her, and who accepted weighted grades, who didn't accept weighted grades, what they were looking for in the kind of student that she wanted to go. She ended up at the University of Oregon and received the Senate scholarship. So she and she didn't have to apply for it. They just sort of she automatically qualified for it. She ended up with 40 credits because of her AP classes. And even as an AP teacher, that's something that was hard for me to wrap my head around because I hadn't, shamefully, I hadn't really taken the time to understand the added value. Should I keep going?
I'm worried that this disconnected.
Oh, I can still see you.
Well, there's a delay.
Okay, show her face.
Oh. I wish I could see. I'm seeing that this is not live. So I'm wondering if when I plug this in, it
20 seconds, it's still working.
It stopped.
It's still working.
Is it still working? Okay. So you're hearing us babble like this. So I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Right up the screen.
I don't know if that's working.
Yeah, I haven't seen you disconnect on Facebook.
Okay, then go ahead and keep talking.
It's
trying to show you.
So I feel like she worked really hard for the benefits that she got, and she happened to go to a school that accepted quite a few credits that wasn't really good. But the problem is that they're not, oh no, I see where it's disconnected.
Did it disconnect?
Yeah, it's doing that circle thing.
Okay.
But I
Bob
don't
says
know
we're
if it-
still. Bob says we're still connected on his computer.
Okay. So there. Oh, it's back. Yeah. Now it's showing you spread the camera around. So
I was trying to show you on the Zoom because you're on my screen on Zoom.
right. But if we're just watching you listen to me intently and talk about periodically.
Let's see if I can show you. Oh, I know what I can do. There she is.
Oh, that's hilarious. So the problem, I mean, it's not really a problem. The sort of issue that we ran into is not, it is the credits that she received have to fit into the major that she ends up in order to be as useful as they might be. So if it's not super math heavy or super history heavy, they'll help her in the sense that she can register early and she's somewhat ahead of the game, but they're not necessarily going to help her graduate earlier, be able to take her term off or do any of those kinds of things that she might have wanted to do if she were truly ahead. I would not argue that she has any regrets. I could be wrong, but she seems to, it helps train her and give her a good ability to pace herself and to figure out how, find her work ethic, which I think is fantastic. So, I'm not really sure how to talk about my son's experience. It was very different. We had 2 kids on either end of the spectrum. So, and he's working and taking a year off and not really sure which 4-year college he wants to attend at this point. And so, it was never a question about AP classes. Just going to take them to the freshman and took them all 4 years. So, she didn't have a lot of options to boost herself up in a very rigorous and, highly considered high school. So to separate herself, I think she felt like she had to take a lot of those AP classes in order to stand out. And I don't disagree with that. Now we offer congruent classes, and she took one of those. She took the math one. I was listening to you tell Gabby's story, and it's very parallel to this. So we also offer the seal of biliteracy now. It's not an IB school, so we're not doing we don't have any of those dilemmas to deal with. But we do have a parallel sort of vocational school that offers college credits, different ways to sort of advance your resume other than the AP classes, which I think is great, because I think there needs to be a more diverse offering for students. Not every student should take an AP class. And we don't do the same thing with our scores that the IB scores do. But, I've had kids who knew they didn't need the test and that they were going to keep their weighted grade regardless, and they flunked the test. They went and took it and they flunked it. Yeah. So, I don't know what we're teaching them. I don't think we're giving them a great message by making that passable. This year was our first year as a high school where they had to take the test to keep the weighted grade, and then COVID happened and they created all sorts of alternatives for the kids so that they weren't penalized for having to be quarantined. So, I think if you have that kid who knows where they want to go or has a general idea they want to go and can differentiate the schools that need, if they're solidly in the camp of knowing they're going to go to schools that aren't going to take AP classes, but need them in order to differentiate their resumes or their application, then I think they need to take them and give them their all. And if they're going to go to a school that offers a ton of credits, and Steve Boulder offers our kids a ton of credits. And I've had 3 or 4 students that I know who have gone and who started as sophomores, and they graduated in 3 years. So, and that saves them a fortune. So I think that you have to, it's sad what we expect of these kids before they even start high school. As far as AP schooling goes.
Well, and I think one of the challenges for kids and frankly for parents too is that we have this tendency to, as a society, to push better, faster, stronger. And when it comes to academics, that means okay, we're doing AP, we're doing IB, we're taking all these advanced classes, and that was a big learning for my family down the line, that we actually were doing our son a real disservice.
Right.
and frankly ourselves too, a disservice by pushing him into classes that he really didn't have the academic maturity to perform well in. But, you know, sort of a question for you. I mean, knowing that there are a lot of reasons why you might take AP classes that are just college related, right? You might get credit, you might need them to get into a particular school. You might benefit from a weighted GPA, all of those things. What are some of the non-college related reasons why you might choose AP or IB? And let's sort of lump them all under the same heading for the purpose of today's conversation.
I feel like they're a throwback to kind of old school teaching. Before we started teaching to these standardized tests, they're a very, very good training ground for critical thinking. We teach them as if they're college courses. And while we all have to get for AP, we have to get our syllabi approved, audited by the College Board to make sure that it's rigorous and being taught in a manner that is in keeping with the College Board. And I think that it almost gives the kids a break. So if they're at a rigorous school or they're not at a rigorous school, it offers them the ability to just sort of stand out within their peers if they have a different way of thinking, if they need a less traditional, depending on the teacher in the course, but if they need that little nudge in a general direction, or if it's something that they're passionate about. You know, we would get comments from one of the AP history teachers about how it was really interesting to watch how she sort of plotted her way through that course. And that was, I think that's a huge confidence builder for any class. I've been really particular in fighting for the right for kids who aren't necessarily special ed, but who aren't necessarily mainstream, to be allowed to take my Spanish class. I think that it is my AP Spanish class, and then with an exception for the exam, if they need it. And it gives them that sort of feeling of achievement. So it's not going to make them feel stupid like it did with your son. It can be such a boost to help them find their passion. And I just think there's no substitute for that.
So tell us a little, since you teach both AP and regular versions of the classes, you know, if you could briefly summarize what's the difference in the AP approach. And again, I know that you're talking about AP, but thinking of this from the perspective of whichever version of higher level class your school offers, I'm assuming there are going to be some similarities.
I think if I understand you, I think that schools have to make a decision about what they want their higher level classes to look like. So we now offer a field by literacy, which is STAMP, kind of like an addendum to their diploma. And it's a stamp on their diploma, and there's a state version, and then there's a district version. And we offer both for the kids, and they just have to get through 4 years. So they don't necessarily have to take AP if they want to free up their schedule for something else. But if you're going to be a top-heavy school and you're going to have those higher-level classes, then the biggest difference is that the curriculum is decided by the district for everything leading up to AP, and then the curriculum is determined by the College Board for AP. So they're completely, you have to figure out a way to make them parallel. So I start with my lower level. Like this year I'm teaching Spanish too, and I've been really, really careful about making sure that they get kind of thrown in the deep end when it comes to speaking. And this was prior to coronavirus, putting everything online. But where they have to do in the form that they're going to have to do in the AP exam, where they have to speak 2 minutes, like they 15 minutes, where they have to speak 15 minutes, to stretch that out for them. So it doesn't feel, pardon my horrible language teacher pun, but so it doesn't feel terribly foreign to them when they have to do it under pressure to get a 3 or higher. I think that answers your question, but I'm not positive.
Yeah. So, so one of the things switch my camera back. One of the things that I always wonder about is it seems like so often when kids get to high school, what they do as freshmen tracks them into places for the rest of their high school career. So let's say someone comes in as a freshman without a language background, or whichever course it is that they're interested in. As an incoming freshman, they may or may not yet be on the path to get all the prereqs done to be taking the AP or the IB classes. Is there a remediation path for that in a typical high school? Or are you sort of
It varies
stuck?
depending on the language department and the administration.
Yeah.
So I have students every year who jump from level 3 because they started at 1. So then in theory, they can only go through 4. But if they show a great propensity for language study, or they really want to, dive deeper into it, they can take an exam. And if they qualify, they can jump from 3 into AP. I see it more, I've been at schools where I've had to fight just to have AP. So it depends from school to school. At my school, I will go to battle for those kids to jump level 4 if they're going to be seniors and they really want to take it, and they want their school of literacy, but they also want that AP credit. But depending on who's in charge, it can be quite a battle.
Yeah. And I would imagine that's similar in any subject area.
Yeah, and I've been at the school, this is my 8th year. This is my 3rd principal in those 8 years. So it just
That's like Beaverton District.
Who's in charge. Yeah, it depends on who's in charge and how they feel about each teacher teaching each AP content.
Yeah.
Right? So if the kids are the focus, in theory, that tracking process is far less stringent. If so that you can, if you can sort of direct a kid to those teachers who are going to stimulate their love for learning. If the administration doesn't agree, say, with the students on who stimulates their learning, then they're going to get in the way of that. And so you really have to, it's a fine line. But I think schools right now are just so desperate to kind of find whatever path works that they're not, as in the schools that I've been in anyway, in my experience, they're not as tightly tied to the track as they used to be. That's something that's really evolved with IB programs and field of literacy and various other ways to get added credit without taking those other classes.
So another, you mentioned a while ago all the craziness of COVID stuff right now. Do you foresee challenges for students next year who are going to be starting on these tracks where they maybe did not get as complete a curriculum this year, leading up to that class? And I know, I know language is your area, but I would assume it would be similar for math and science and kind of every other topic. I mean, what suggestions do you have for families whose students will be starting in these courses in the fall to make sure that they're on track to be successful?
So we still do our summer homework. We're still sort of behaving as if some things are normal or they're going to go back to normal. The AP board has been, our college board this year has been more receptive for COVID and giving out other resources. So I'm hoping that because the kids have to join my AP, now they have to join AP classes when they sign up for an AP class, that they'll have access to that over the summer so that they can start availing themselves of the resources that are there. But I also think that they need to kind of trust the process and understand that teachers who teach these courses know where they're going to be, and that we're in communication with one another, and that we're not going to, if they're still feeling courageous enough to take that plunge, that we're not going to let them fall through.
Yeah,
because that doesn't benefit anybody.
Right. I know they've made some big adjustments to the test this year.
So my test, the Spanish language and culture test, is the only one that this year has 0 writing.
Wow, 0 writing.
And so, great. So normally the test is divided into two equally valuable parts. You have the multiple choice, which is 50% of the exam, and incorporates reading comprehension and reading and listening comprehension. And then the second portion of the exam is interpersonal speaking and interpersonal writing, and then presentational speaking and presentational writing. And that's the other 50%. So now they just have two speaking parts. And so for all of us who were trying to kind of catch everything, that set us back a little bit. But, you know, the silver lining is that we all went digital, and so it was very easy to adjust to, oh, okay, well, you just said they have speaking parts, so I'm just going to do the speaking assignment. And then I can give you feedback on those to help you adjust to what it's going to be like when you're talking to. So they have more practice on the speaking parts than they've ever had before.
So it's an important don't teach to the test.
Yeah.
You may teach to the test and it doesn't matter.
They want you to teach the test, right? But they kept changing it. And they didn't really, so they pushed all the test dates back. My students were supposed to be taking their test this week. And now it's the 22nd. My seniors checked out last week. So I don't have any control over what they're doing to prepare. And the 5 other level kids that I have in my class, we're just going to keep going along as if nothing's changed. But, you know, we're just sort of, they didn't release the practice information until Monday.
Oh, wow.
For each, like, the sort of test-specific practice information. And the AP test for Spanish was under such rigorous change. But I think that was really unfortunate because I don't have access to my kids like I did before.
Yeah.
My seniors.
So one of the questions that I get from people a lot that I wanted to share some thoughts on is someone, you know, a student who, like Sydney, comes into college with a whole bunch of existing credit, and oftentimes parents say, oh, well, you know, we'll apply as a sophomore or as a transfer student since you have all these credits. I strongly caution you against doing that because there are a lot of things that are only available to freshmen that are not available to transfer students. And fortunately, AP and IB tests do not require you to come in as a transfer student. So the financial aid that's available to freshmen is vastly more generous than that available to transfer students. There may be different housing options available to freshmen that aren't available to transfer students, student engagement resources that are only there for freshmen. So no matter how much credit your student has coming into college, from their weighted classes, they should apply as freshmen. The college will adjust their status once they process those credits, but you'd be doing yourself a huge disservice if you did not apply as a freshman.
Yeah, I agree 100%. If you're going to take advantage of those credits and your college allows you to do so later, to sort of put them in, you know, I mean, it helps to avoid a writing class and a math class, but she can register earlier. Those are really, I mean, they don't sound like great bonuses, but when you have a kid going to school out of state, and it's really their first time away from home, and there's a lot to adjust to. So it really does offer them a great level of sort of calm. And to me, I feel like that's getting my money's worth on the AP exam, for sure. I think depriving yourself of the freshman sort of safety net is a real mistake.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're pushing up against our time limit. Jen, anything you have to add before we wrap up? Any questions you have? Things that you would like people to know that we haven't already covered?
You know, I think my favorite thing about AP that I would want parents to know is that it isn't right for everybody, but for the kids that it's right for, it's a really good push to get them. You know, there are kids who I think I've had come through my classroom who nobody ever thought they would be successful on an AP exam, and when they were a totally different kid going out when they were coming in. And so I just think that's really the added value for them. So I don't want people to rule them out of hand because their student hasn't excelled at something from day one. You know, they may have, as they mature, they may have developed a deeper interest or an ability to really go for it. And I think that they should all be afforded that chance.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And thanks
My
for
pleasure.
putting up with all this crazy Zoom and Facebook and everything else.
Yeah, I teach high school online, and I now understand.
Been there, done that.
Glitches. Don't even recognize glitches. Just a day-to-day occurrence.
Right. All right. Well, we're going to sign off here.